Brazil now. Its attempt at auctioning off oil exploration rights to foreign energy firms isn't quite going to plan. Only one block has so far received a bid. The auction was an attempt to reverse a disastrous policy that kept foreign investment out of its oil industry and resulted in billions of dollars of lost revenue. Now, 287 land and offshore exploration blocks will be under the hammer, and Brazil hopes to raise more than $150 million through the sale. But analysts say that is just a fraction of the billions of dollars that Brazil could have had if it hadn't removed large areas from its 2007 auction. Now, the sale is the first of 9 bidding rounds planned for the coming years for areas that could hold up to 10 billion barrels of recoverable oil. Analysts say that could be enough to supply the United States for more than a year. Petrobras has been at the center of a 3-year corruption scandal, and it has the biggest debts of any major oil company. President Michel Temer is hoping to raise more foreign capital by luring in more investments from outside into the country's oil sector. For more on this, I'm joined by Paulo Roberto Franca. He's here in the studio, and he is the Consul General of Brazil to Turkey. Thank you ever so much for joining us today on Money Talks. Great to have you on the show. Let's talk a little bit about, first, the oil industry in Brazil. Are you a little disappointed by the initial response to the auction?
Well, first of all, Azar and TRT World, thank you very much for this opportunity and this invitation. I'm not disappointed because I think it's the first step. And I think as well that you have to look at the global perspective of this initiative. Oil prices are low. This is not exactly the jewel of the crown. It's not pre-salt, as you have mentioned in your previous intervention. And of course, what is important now is that the message that we are passing to the business community. Brazil is opening up its market. Brazil is changing, and the change is very substantive. We've come from a recent past, where the intervention of the state was very important, too high for the standards that we need in terms of economic efficiency. And now Brazil is showing the world that it's changing its pattern, it's changing its model.
Right.
And what is important at this stage is that new good investors, quality investors, do the bids, and they're coming. And the first, as you mentioned, this was the first chunk of the blocks. There are another part of the blocks that are put for the bids, and we have not yet had the results.
Give us a little bit of historical context. Let's rewind back to 2007. What was the government's rationale at that time in excluding foreign investments from the Brazilian oil sector?
I think that you have to look in terms of how the previous government saw the intervention and the participation of the state. There was a tendency to look into the economy as an area in which the state should have a major participation. And in this regard, a number of investments were done, state-owned companies, a number of areas in which the state increased its participation. The model showed that it has been exhausted, and it didn't work out. The model showed that it was not efficient, and that's why we're going through the problems that we are facing. Now the government is having a new approach, which is more in line with what is going on in the world. Brazil has a very complex economy, and it needs this airing up. It needs to be more efficient. It needs foreign investments. It needs business to have a better environment for the investments that Brazilians do need in terms of creating employment, jobs, and new opportunities.
Let's look at the Brazilian economy. It's shrunk something like 7.4% in the last 2 years. Your government is planning to spend about $45 billion in new infrastructure. And in the process of doing that, it's auctioning off concessions to highways, ports, airports, to foreign investors. Two questions. Do you think that foreign investors will have the appetite for this level of investment in what is considered now a high-risk economy? And two, what will you do if you don't get the kind of investment that you're looking for in those areas?
I think that foreign investment is looking to Brazil with a very positive eyesight. Just to give you an idea, in the last 12 months, there have been $50 billion that have entered into Brazil. The perspective is that in 2017, it's going to be much more in the course of the year. So I think that there is a number of opportunities that are being created. As you mentioned, infrastructure is one of them. We lagged behind infrastructure investment in previous years. We didn't do as much as the country needed. And we have to do it. Roads, railroads, investments in airports, investments in a number of ports, a number of areas that will boost Brazilian economy. That's what we need.
Indeed. Mr. Paulo Roberto Franca, Consul General to Turkey, thank you ever so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.